The wind howled across the dusty plains like a lonely cry from the past, sweeping clouds of golden dirt across the wide empty road that led to the small town of Red Ridge. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the land in shades of amber and fire. It was the kind of place where strangers were noticed immediately, and where survival depended on grit more than luck. Into this lonely town walked a young woman whose shoes were worn thin and whose eyes carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. Her name was Clara Whitmore. Her dress was faded, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion, and the small suitcase she carried seemed heavier than the world itself. She had been walking for 2 days straight after jumping off a freight wagon miles away. The truth was, Clara had nowhere left to go. The last town she had worked in had turned its back on her after a cruel rumor spread like wildfire. The hotel owner fired her without explanation, the townsfolk whispered behind her back, and the men who once tipped their hats now stared at her like she carried a curse. Hunger clawed at her stomach as she stepped onto the wooden boardwalk of the town's only street. Every step felt uncertain, as if the ground might disappear beneath her. Clara glanced around nervously, gathering the last bit of courage she had left. She needed a job, any job, sweeping floors, washing dishes, feeding horses, anything that would give her a place to sleep and a chance to start over. As she passed the general store, a group of men leaned against the railing outside, watching her silently. One of them muttered something under his breath that made the others laugh quietly. Clara lowered her eyes and kept walking. She had grown used to that sound. Mocking laughter, judgment, suspicion, but she refused to let it break her again. At the far end of the street stood a weathered wooden sign swinging slowly in the wind. It read, "Callahan Ranch, hiring ranch hands." Clara stopped walking. Her heart pounded. A ranch job meant hard labor, but it also meant food and a roof. Taking a deep breath, she followed the dirt path that stretched beyond the town and into the open prairie. The ranch house appeared after nearly half a mile, standing strong against the wind like a silent guardian of the land. Horses grazed peacefully nearby, and the smell of hay filled the air. Clara stepped closer, clutching her suitcase tightly. Before she could knock, the front door opened slowly. A tall cowboy stepped out, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow across the porch. His hat was pulled low, and his eyes were sharp but calm, the kind of eyes that had seen storms and survived them. This was Luke Callahan, the owner of the ranch, a man known across 3 counties for his quiet strength and stubborn independence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Luke studied the tired stranger standing before him, noticing the dust on her shoes, the fear hidden behind her brave expression, and the exhaustion in her eyes. Clara swallowed nervously before finally speaking. "Sir, I heard you might be hiring." Her voice trembled despite her effort to sound confident. Luke leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. "Depends on what kind of work you're looking for." Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. "Anything. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, I can even work the stables if you teach me." The wind rustled her hair across her face, and Luke noticed how she didn't brush it away, too tired even for that small movement. He remained silent for several seconds, thinking. The truth was, the ranch had been struggling for months. Workers had left after a bad drought, and the remaining hands were stretched thin. He did need help, but hiring a lone young woman on a rough cattle ranch was something the town would talk about for weeks. Clara's fingers tightened around her suitcase as the silence stretched longer. She feared she already knew the answer. Finally, Luke spoke again, his voice calm but serious. "Why'd you come all the way out here looking for work?" Clara hesitated. Her past felt like a wound she didn't want to reopen. "Because I have nowhere else left to go." The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. There were no excuses, no elaborate stories, just truth. Luke looked out at the horizon for a moment, then back at her. Something about her determination reminded him of someone he had lost years ago, someone who had also refused to give up. He rubbed the back of his neck thoughtfully before speaking again. "This ranch isn't easy work," he said slowly. "Days start before sunrise. Sometimes they don't end until midnight." Clara nodded immediately. "I'm not afraid of hard work." Another silence fell between them. Then Luke stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly as if sharing a secret with the wind itself. "All right," he said quietly. "You can have the job, but only under one condition." Clara's heart skipped. "What condition?" Luke looked directly into her eyes and whispered something so unexpected it made her breath catch. "Only if you'll marry me by sundown." Clara stared at him, stunned. The words echoed in her mind like thunder across the plains. She had come asking for work, not a proposal from a stranger. Her mind raced with confusion, fear, and disbelief. "You can't be serious," she whispered. Luke's expression didn't change. "I am." The wind swept across the ranch again, carrying the weight of the impossible decision now placed before her. Clara looked toward the open fields stretching endlessly into the horizon. She had nowhere to go. No family waiting. No safe place left in the world. And now this cowboy was offering her something she had never expected, a chance at belonging. But at what cost? As the sun slowly began its descent toward the western hills, Clara realized she had only a few hours to decide whether this strange cowboy's offer would save her life, or ruin it forever. And before we continue the story, dear viewers, if you love emotional stories like this that touch the heart and keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next unforgettable story. The prairie wind carried a strange silence after Luke's words. Clara stood frozen on the dusty ground, staring at the cowboy in disbelief. She had expected rejection, maybe even suspicion, but never something like this. A marriage proposal from a man she had known for less than 5 minutes. The idea sounded absurd, yet Luke Callahan's face showed no trace of humor. He wasn't joking. The seriousness in his eyes told her that much. Clara slowly placed her suitcase on the ground, trying to steady her thoughts. "Why?" she finally asked softly. Luke leaned against the wooden fence beside the porch, looking out toward the grazing horses before answering. "Because this ranch needs someone who won't run away when things get hard." Clara frowned slightly. "That doesn't explain marriage." Luke sighed quietly. "The town already talks too much. If a single woman starts living here alone, they'll make your life miserable, and mine too." He paused before continuing. "But if you're my wife, no one will question it." Clara absorbed his words slowly. In truth, she understood exactly what he meant. She had seen how small towns judged people who didn't fit their expectations. Still, marriage was not a small favor. It was a promise, a commitment that could shape 2 lives forever. She looked at Luke again, searching his face for signs of cruelty or hidden motives, but she found none. Instead, she saw something unexpected, kindness hidden behind a rough exterior. "You don't even know me," Clara whispered. Luke nodded. "That's true." Then he added quietly, "But I know the look of someone who's been through more than they should have." Those words struck deeper than he realized. Clara felt her throat tighten as memories flashed through her mind, being chased from her last town, the rumors that destroyed her reputation, the nights spent sleeping under open skies. For the first time in weeks, someone wasn't judging her. They were simply seeing her. Luke pushed himself off the fence and walked a few steps closer. "Listen," he said gently. "I'm not asking for love today. Just a partnership. You help me keep this ranch alive, and I'll make sure you never have to wander alone again." Clara looked toward the horizon where the sun had begun to sink slowly toward the hills. Sundown wasn't far away. The world felt strangely quiet, as if even the wind was waiting for her answer. She realized something important in that moment. Every door in her life had closed behind her. Every path had led to disappointment. But standing here now was a man offering her not just a job, but a place in the world again. Her heart pounded as she picked up her suitcase and stepped onto the porch. Luke watched her carefully, unsure of what she would say next. Clara stopped a few feet away and looked directly into his eyes. "If I say yes, you promise I won't regret it?" Luke's answer came without hesitation. "I promise I'll spend every day trying to make sure you don't." The honesty in his voice broke the last wall of fear inside her. Clara took a deep breath as the warm orange light of sunset washed across the prairie. "All right," she said quietly. "I'll marry you." Luke blinked once, surprised by how quickly the words came. Then a faint smile appeared beneath the shadow of his hat. Within an hour, the small-town preacher had been called to the ranch. A few curious ranch hands gathered nearby as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Clara stood beside Luke on the porch, her dusty dress fluttering gently in the evening breeze. It wasn't the wedding she had imagined as a young girl, but somehow it felt right. The preacher spoke the simple vows quickly as the last rays of sunlight painted the land gold. When Luke gently placed the ring on Clara's finger, she felt something unexpected, hope. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel empty. As the preacher finished, Luke tipped his hat slightly and said with quiet warmth, "Welcome home, Mrs. Callahan." Clara smiled softly, realizing that the stranger she had met only hours ago had just given her the one thing she thought she had lost forever, a place to belong. And sometimes, the most unexpected choices lead us exactly where we were meant to be. And if this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe to the channel and support more inspiring stories like this. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories about hope, courage, and second chances.